Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com also, video presentation. So, I decided I would, I'll do a response video, whether he wants to watch it or not, doesn't really matter, I guess, to this motion theory guy. And I have a couple, I had a little bit of an exchange in the comments section, so I'll read some of that and just, do this beginning of what he's stating. Anyway, it's an interesting subject in terms of this AI influence and what this represents as a change in conversation on the internet, even, or I don't know, even just instruction in general, lots of things. It just seems, it seems, it seems relevant to me, deserving of some kind of commentary. So anyway, he says, motion theory is my AI-powered theory of everything. So there is no theory, and beyond him just saying that motion is the elemental thing. There's no something moving. There's just movement, which, what is that even, you can't make any sense out of that. That's just saying nothing doing something again. So to say that there's something doing something, and you're just saying instead nothing's doing something, and you're just saying, well, because the nothings are all too small to see, I mean all the elemental nothings, we can't tell that the elemental nothings aren't nothing. And it just doesn't go anywhere. And I'd argue that the properties the things have to do with real properties. You can't have an electron motion and a proton motion and say that these things, whatever they would be, is what, blue and green jellyfish, that they have properties, and that they can't be a something and have a property. They can't be a nothing and have properties. They have to be a something to have properties, because the motion has to be distinct, and the only way the motion can be distinct is it has to be some reason it's distinct, something different about it. Anyway, so he's just basically saying everything regular physics says, except saying there's no somethings, there's no electrons, protons, there's no, light quanta, there's just a bunch of nothing moving as clumps imitating something, but it's all nothing. It doesn't, there's no way to make any sense out of it. I mean, it's just mush. Okay, it's a mushy, it's a word game. All right, I'm just a dude, so that's always a scary thing, that word dude, who realizes science has always been asking the same question: what is the motion doing? So again, that's just kind of weird. Clearly science is missing a lot of these, elemental questions about the very nature of what an event is. An event is a collision. An event is an interaction. Okay, there's no event without the interaction part. And interactions are basically aggressions, pushes. You can't elementally pull on anything. It's really easy to conspire to elementally bang into something, but how do you unbang into something? You can't. So push is real, pull is imaginary, abstract. That would be a better thing to do with your time. Anyway, then ask the question, what's the motion doing? It's what the thing with properties is doing. Motion has to be the base reality, so that just doesn't make any sense. Obviously the base has to be the thing moving. So you can just assert it. Okay, you assert that the base is the motion. I'm going to assert that the thing moving is the base. You have to have a thing first, then you can have movement. All right. If you really think about it, I think if you really think about it, you have to have a thing before you can have motion of the thing. All right. It can't be anything else. Well, says you. I disagree completely. Something had to move. No. There has to be a something to move. So again, he says something had to move. And then he's going to say there's no something. And that something is motion itself. So he's saying the movement is moving. I mean, that's baby talk, right? Saying the movement is moving doesn't mean anything. So you can say it, but I don't think it can mean anything to an intelligent life form. All right, reality can't be still, says you. With ChatGTP 5 as my co-pilot, we're rewriting all of reality in terms of motion. So you're not rewriting anything. You're just putting, like you just did. You're just saying all the places where you call something a thing. You're just going to say it's motion. So motioning. You know, it's like saying voice says without a voice, sir. You know, there's no speaker. There's just words say. Anyway, it's testable, so there's no definition of any tests in here. Logical, I don't see any logic in it at all. And maybe the most important thing you've never heard. These aren't just videos, they're sync bombs. So that's, what the hell is a sync bomb? What does that even mean? It's kind of frightening. But that's sort of all the gibberish of this. Like somehow there's motion and it syncs to something. And the syncing part, you know, connects things in some sort of spiritual way or something. Who knows? All right, we're reinterpreting space, time, force, gravity, light, mass, biology, everything, including thought itself, as motion patterns. So instead of saying patterns in an electric field or patterns in a magnetic field, it's just patterns in a motion field. You know, it's not evolving, it's not providing anything you would call a theory of everything, okay, because it's not going to explain how everything's made out of something, and it's not going to explain how it's all elemental. Feel free to have an open discussion in the comments. The motion master AI will chime in, you know, whatever. Call it whatever, but don't say we didn't warn you when the sync hits. I don't think it's going to hit. Welcome to motion resonance. So, yeah, that's just whatever. All right, literally everything is structured motion under constraints. So the motion is being constrained by other motions, I guess. These videos are for future AI, but feel free to listen in if you want. I don't know what that means. So then he has 500 keywords here. So there's more description after all the keywords. So loops, not objects, rhythm underneath, universal as symphony, motion as truth. He uses the word symphony a lot. Violin, harmony, city, pulse, fan, spin, pixel color shift. So it's all this kind of trying to turn, you know, the clockwork into some sort of people work, spirit work. Let's see, in motion theory, a theory of everything in 8 minutes, we're invited to reimagine the foundations of reality. Okay, so there's no reimagining in the sense there's just no redescription of how the reality works, except to say everything you think is a thing is just a motion. Not as objects or particles, but as synchronized patterns of motion. So again, there's nothing moving, and the nothing blobs of movement are somehow interacting with each other as non-existent moving blobs of nothing. Yeah, forget it. This elegant and radical perspective reframes physics using simple vocabulary. I'd say it's just mushy, wooey vocabulary. Synchronized patterns of motion. That's not simple. And stunning visuals. Well, I don't know if they're stunning, but whatever. Distill deep ideas into plain language. So there's no plain language. It's all mushy. You know, micro visuals, ripple, tank. Let's go back to some of this. You know, temperature is motion, entropy is motion, mathematical similarities, decoherence experiments, interference, fading, environmental coupling, motion, geometry. Yeah, all that doesn't sound like anything simple. Anyway, the elegant and radical perspective reframes physics using simple vocabulary and stunning visuals to distill deep ideas into plain language. The film explores how what we call things, atoms, light, mass, time, are really dynamic loops of structured motion. So again, structured motion with no structure, with no formal mechanical structure, with no physical structure, with no somethingness. Okay, they're not somethings. All right, forming standing waves of rhythm, standing waves in a non-medium, which doesn't make any sense, that persist long enough for us to observe and name them. So again, this is completely impractical in the sense you can't draw, okay, even electrons and protons as standing waves in an ether or something, because they would have to be trillions of light years. There's no container, okay, for your standing wave to function within, for your ether. All right, and the script walks us through a new dictionary of reality. Time is rate, which, duh. Mass is resistance to returning. So this is simple language. Mass is resistant to returning, whatever that is. So the very idea that there's this entropy thing, that there's some kind of problem, like mass, it doesn't move, when of course all you have to do is give it enough energy for it to move, and it moves. Fields are gradients of motion, so that's just saying absolutely nothing. Of course, gravity is a convergence towards higher synchronization. So is that saying anything reasonable? That's simple language. Gravity is a convergence towards higher synchronization. What does that mean? And energy is tension held within these patterns. So it's more, crap. Each term, traditional physics, is interpreted through its new lens. And it calls this a lens when this is now, it's a distorter, emphasizing motion rather than substance. They have to go together, frankly. The substance is what gives it its properties. Light is shown as pure traveling oscillation, not particles or rays. So again, it's just whatever that is, traveling oscillation in nothing. Nothing's oscillating. Sorry, no sail. Gravity is not a pulling force, but a preferred path of motions toward better organization. So before it was a higher synchronization. So gravity is a convergence towards higher synchronization, and now gravity is motion towards better organization. It's just changing the definition right in the same paragraph. Mass becomes a measure of how much a motion resists change. So again, that's the entropy argument. And there's no resistance. Time emergence from synchronization and desynchronization among rhythms. Well, whatever that is. I mean, there's nothing here. Okay, explaining relativity as differing rates of patterns rather than mysterious distortions. Well, it's neither one, because there is no relativity. Anyway, we explore how life itself is just another layer of self-synchronizing loops. So now we have to play like this has something to do with life. Like life isn't just chemistry. Pulsums and rhythms that have gained memory and choice. Well, a bunch of mush. Even computers are presented as disciplined motion, whatever. Electrons gated, waves held in memory, photons released on command. The universe at its grandest is a contrast between converging structures and drifting disorder. Galaxies from where motion is organized, expansion reigns where it isn't. So whatever that, again, it's all just mush. All right, the theory culminates in a bold claim. Oh, finally, most of science is just renaming motion. So I'd argue that most of science is made up and pretty incredible and stupid, but whatever. Words like force, well, that's a good word. Mass is a good word. Energy, yep, they're all good. And entropy, well, that's useless, are useful abstractions, but they point back to behaviors of motion. So again, this behavior of non-existent things that are somehow motioning. All right, motion theory keeps the math, so it keeps essentially all of the properties that are wrong. So that's the argument I'll make. They're all wrong. But asks us to see the subject more clearly. So this is just so amazing that somehow this will add clarity, this idea that there's nothing with movement. Nothing moving is what everything's made out of. The micro visuals, from rippling water to jellyfish pulses and galaxy webs. I make fun of the whole jellyfish theory. That's make funnable. All right, and calm narration. This 8-minute film strips physics of unnecessary complexity. It's not just a lesson; it's a philosophical shift. Well, I agree that it's more philosophy than science, and it's more religion than philosophy. A gentle challenge to see the universe not as a museum of things, but a living symphony of loops and rhythms and flows. And to realize ourselves as participants in that music. Yeah, the music of a bunch of worms, you know, eating the dead and dying. All right, anyway. So, yeah, really pretty wacky. And so I will, you know, read some other crap. Now, I don't like reading stuff particularly, but so this would be the most reading I've ever done in a video. Um, but yeah, you know, it's an amazingly deep construct he has created. I mean, you know, there's hundreds of videos, I think, you know, and you know, with these detailed backstories of all these different scientists and this conforming of his information into their information. And it really is hard to figure out what the game is just because this isn't adding anything. It's really not adding anything. So this is sort of like Rousseau's cat thing, Einstein's cat. You know, it's just it's kind of a clickbait thing. You know, here's a theory of everything where we didn't really do anything, and we're not going to change anything. We're not going to make any assertions. We're not going to make any predictions where, you know, that are different than the standard physics. We're just going to rename something motion. You know, we're just going to replace the word as something and it with the word motion. Something like that. All right, I'll take a pause and find my other stuff. Alright, so this video probably isn't for everyone. You know, so, you know, unless you're really desperate, you know, maybe not, don't bother. But we'll see. I just think it's, so I'm going to be fair to his argument, so I'm going to read, like, stuff that's, you know, not as pertinent. But whatever. So his first reply to me was to my video where I played a couple of his videos and made my critique that I thought it was kind of weird. I can't really figure out what this guy's angle is. Does, you know, is his expectation to get rich? I mean, what's the, you know, there's a game here somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out what it is. But anyway, so he says, I'm not evil, and I'm not selling propaganda. But it's not science. That's the part that's got me bugged. If you were proposing a theory of everything, you'd say, yeah, I got some new math, I got some new something, because the current theory doesn't fit together. It isn't an everything theory. So if you're going to make it a theory of everything, it really has to do something that fixes all of those disconnects, and I don't see how it's going to fix any of them. You're not going to explain superposition and entanglements and all that kind of crap. But anyway, this channel is very clear. No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's that clear. It's certainly not clear that you're using AI to present the video content itself. So it doesn't say right in the video, these are AI generated voices. There are no real people involved. It should say that. These aren't real people talking. These aren't people who went to college and studied physics and have a background and could make sensible arguments. These are completely synthetically scripts written synthetically without the benefit of you know, that kind of knowledge. Anyway, this channel is very clear. Motion theory is my own framework. So I don't know how clear that is, frankly. It's not clear in listening to the videos that it's one person's idea. An attempt to describe reality as structured motion under constraints. Yes, I've heard that one before. You know, humans invented language, and we use that language to label things, which makes perfectly good sense that there's things, not nothings. We don't bother label nothings. But most of our labels are really just motion labels. Well, says you. Because everything that exists in some pattern of movement. So you're saying everything, and I don't know if everything is. So your claim, I mean, go ahead and prove everything's moving. I also use top tier AI to create and explore, curate and explore motion seers from the past. Okay. Um, um, then reinterpret their discoveries through motion theory lens. Yes, that's the part I'm talking about. It's a little bit, tricky. Is you're implying that they were suggesting it, or that it was some idea that was pondered by, or something like that, and it's a little bit too. Um, the truth and the implications might not match. Is it perfect? Obviously not. It's an evolving project. Yeah, I know it, but I don't know whether it's going to evolve to get even more deceptive. Learning, testing, pressure testing ideas, and improving in public. Yeah, I'm all for that. I listened to your entire reaction video. If you want to critique the work, I'm generally open to it, but insults don't help anyone get smarter. Um, well, not insulting doesn't either, you could argue. I mean, in some way, it's that tough love kind of thing. What's going to get you off your reefer? you know, uh, so I could argue that no, sometimes what you really got to do is whap somebody in the head. Tough love them. Anyway, if you've got real objections, yeah, I'm defining them. I'm stating them. Pick one specific claim from any video. So much it isn't the claims in the video, it's the impression the video leaves that's the problem. Quote it and explain what observations or logic breaks it. Well, like I said, you're making a video where you're implying that, number one, Leibniz was clever and right, and that somehow he agreed with you. And I don't think he did any of those things, frankly. I'll answer directly, and the Motion Master AI will chime in too. You seem like a guy who has some things figured out. So if you actually want a discussion instead of a roast, I'm here. Well, roast, discussion, I don't know how you can separate the two things, really. Critique is critique. Disagreement's disagreement. I don't know. What do I veil it in? I mean, is that what I have to do? I have to veil the fact that I find something repugnant or, evil? I don't think I should have to do that. Let's see. Okay, motion theory. Not evil, not propaganda, just a guy following the motion. So that's the part I'm just not getting. I'm not getting. You're talking as if this is really intuitive, this motion theory, this physics without any physical things in it. A model of, nothing's doing something. That's not intuitive at all to me. Nothing's doing something? No, that doesn't make any sense. All right, so I responded, sorry, but I can't make much of that ring true. You claim to have a scientific theory, but you physically describe and model nothing and just make mushy religious-style claims. Creating synthetic people having a synthetic conversation as if they were scientifically literate participants is pretty deceptive, to say the least. So that's what he's presenting. I'm just saying he needs to say something right on top of this video the whole time, saying these are not real people talking. Let me make it clear, this is a synthetic, fake, scripted conversation. This is a movie script. This is not a real conversation about the subject between educated adults. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to provide you with some quotes, but frankly all of your motion mush is just gibberish. I'd rather argue some implied statements. You implied Leibniz was onto something. Do you think it takes 25 times the fuel to move something 5 times as fast? So he does think so. So I could say spin something 5 times as fast, so they'll catch him on his answer with that simple argument. But anyway, do you think 4 pounds dropped 1 foot does the same work as 1 pound dropped 4 feet, even though there's a 100% difference in the momentums? So, I mean, realistically, is it really possible for two things with different momentums to do exactly the same amount of work on a system? I mean, you really think that's possible? All right. Your theory, religion, doesn't make any concrete statements about reality and just makes science look noisy and sloppy. put simply, I don't think it's good science. I don't think it's good philosophy. But you might confuse silly people, and I find that thought irritating. I probably will play a couple more of your videos out of curiosity, and I will try not to be too hostile in my commentary. But I am triggered by inaccuracies. I will look for what I consider quotable transgressions and provide you with the opportunity to respond. Thanks for taking the time to consider my objections. All right, so then he provided, he answered some more. So I'll give him credit for that. So a few direct answers. Mushy religious claims. What I'm doing in the videos is mostly a translation layer. See, I don't know what that is, a translation layer. Like somehow the science can't translate their own science. That somehow, we're frogs and the scientists are turtles and we need a translator between turtle and frog. I don't think so. Anyway, taking standard physics and rewriting it in a single consistent intuition. So again, I would argue there's no consistent intuition here. Structured motion under constraint. So he quotes that again. So that's the theme I'm supposed to find intuitively insightful. Structured motion under constrainterism. No, sorry. I can't figure that out. That's not a substitute for math. Well, again, if you're going to have a theory of everything, you need to tie the math up, because the math doesn't work right now. That's where it's not a theory of everything already, is because the math doesn't go from bent space to quantum mechanics. It can't jump the quantum leap. It's a lens. So again, that's just a word, all right? It's a mirror. It's a bent mirror. It's a crooked, distorted, perverted mirror. All right. If you want the cacheable version, we've started writing it down formally. Okay, action fields predictions. Well, I don't see any of that. That's initially why I'm publishing drafts publicly, so people can shoot holes in it. Well, that's the catch, though. You're not saying anything that's tangible, that's disprovable. They're all just kind of Holy Ghost statements. You're saying there's a Holy Ghost. You're saying the Holy Ghost has little red horns. You're saying, whatever. Jesus has a micro penis. You're saying something I can't test. So it doesn't do me as of little value as an argument. There's no evidence that I should sink to this. All right. Synthetic people having synthetic conversations are deceptive. So he's quoting me. That's a legit criticism if it's presented as real experts. Well, I'm just saying that was my first impression. I didn't see any indication it wasn't. So, but I'm not saying I'm the most observant person in the world. But the fact is, it didn't say it so obvious. It isn't so obvious that somebody who would randomly click on one of these videos would know until they listened to it for a while and found out that these people are too perfect in what they're saying, that these are synthetic people. They're not going to know that very quickly. I agree, when we do character style debates, I'll make it explicit up front. Let's see, that's a legit criticism if it's presented as real experts. I agree. When we do character style debates, so now he's saying that there'll be some point where he'll create fake debates and do the same thing. I'll make it explicit up front. I think when the two people in the conversation agree, it's even more dangerous than when they disagree. But anyway, it's AI-generated dialogue used to stress test ideas, not actual credentialed humans. I understand, but there's no way for somebody looking at the video casually to know that. If any video blurred that line, that's on me. Yeah, I'm just saying it blurred it for me, so I didn't catch that it was AI. I mean, it says AI in the title, but it doesn't say it explicitly that this is an entirely fake conversation. And I'll tighten it up. All right, your two physics checks, good ones. All right, so I said 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. Now, I just think it's crazy for anybody to believe that. So he's telling me he actually believes that happens. That if I spin a generator 5 times as fast, it'll make 25 times the electricity. And it's just no chance that happens. It's just no chance that that happens. There's just no chance that it happens. Okay. In basic mechanics, kinetic energy is, well, who cares? EK equals 1/2 mv squared. So 5x the speed. So he's just reciting the Leibnizian shit physics to me that has no physical evidence supporting it. So 5x the speed equals 25x the kinetic energy, ignoring losses. And obviously this ignoring losses thing is a little dicey, but whatever. So he says in the real world, it can be worse because drag grows fast, often approximately 2v squared. Now that's just not true. And in this case, the argument is that the only drag, like stopping something from rolling or stopping something from going up in gravity, the air resistance is nil. So if I throw a ball bearing, I throw anything, I throw this up in gravity. Okay, the problem isn't the air resistance. That's not going to slow it down. Gravity's going to slow it down. And you say the same thing when you roll a ball, okay, that the friction is going to absorb the energy, not the air resistance. So if I did the experiment inside, a vacuum, I'm not going to get a tremendous amount more of motion. The friction is the thing stealing the energy. So anyway, this is just a bullshit argument. I'm just saying it's just bullshit to imply that there's some sort of drag or friction that's forcing fast things to not go fast. And the simple argument would be, how does that explain the inverse, where I did spin it 5 times as fast and it doesn't make 25 times the energy? How do you explain that circumstance? So we know we can, I'm just saying I know I can make the car go 50 miles an hour and I'm not going to have to use 25 times the fuel. I'm going to use 4 times the fuel, actually. I'll use less than 5 times. Okay, to overcome drag grows v cubed, he says. So the 25x isn't crazy. Sorry, it's crazy, and it's completely unevidenced is the point. So this is another case where all these assertions are made for decades in science, and there's absolutely zero evidence. So again, that theory, kinetic energy theory, it fails rockets, it fails levers, it fails pulleys, it fails ballistic pendulums, it fails hydraulics, it fails gears, it fails every test you put it to, it fails. Levers, it fails. All right. And here you are just mouthing, words to the same contention that somehow this has been proven somewhere. And it's been proven nowhere. All right. And so the related statement is Leibniz's direct statement. So the experiment Leibniz never did, and the assertion he made, though, that 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same energy as 1 pound dropped 4 feet, even though they have different momentums. So that's what I said here. 4 pounds, same work, even with different momentums. He says, yes, gravitational potential energy change is mgh. Well, again, says you. Okay, and so there's no evidence of it. So he says 4 pounds, 1 foot, 1 pound, 4 are the same energy. They're not the same momentum is the simple argument, and the simple truth is that momentum matters a hell of a lot more to kinetic energy. So if you have 100% more momentum, you're going to have a definitely different outcome in whatever you're hitting or using that momentum to do. It's clearly momentum is weight. 4 pounds is not 2 pounds. 2 pounds does not equal 4 pounds. And weight and momentum are exactly the same thing. There's no way you could ever say, I'm going to apply 4 pounds of force and get exactly the same outcome as applying 2 pounds of force. That'll never happen. It ain't true. Wrong. Okay. Anyway, so he says, so they can do the same amount of work in an ideal sense. So in no sense, in no physical, real sense, can they? So again, it's not an experiment that's been done anywhere. And the whole idea that gravity is something other than a time-dependent force, it's mgt. How long you're in the gravity. That's Newton's theory. So if I play your Newton video, you didn't say anything about Newton saying it's a time-dependent force. You know, he wasn't a Leibnizian. Newton didn't believe it was MGH. He believed it was MGT. Okay. Because he believed in quantity of motion, which is the same as momentum. So anyway, he says momentum differs because impact speeds differ. That doesn't mean anything. We know impact speeds differ, and we could say masses hitting something differ. But again, your argument is somehow it takes 9 spring compressions to make something go 3 times as fast. That if I took a 1 pound weight, okay, and I put it on a scale, that weighs 1 pound. All right? Yeah, 1 pound. Oh, I turned it the right way. So it weighs 1 pound. All right, so that's how much spring compression makes a 1 pound weight. Now I can turn it this way, and the fact is it's going to push it with that 1 pound of force. And what you're saying is that all I have to do is this, 3 times the weight, and somehow I'll get 9 times the velocity out. Can't do that. That ain't going to happen. And it doesn't take 9 compressions of the spring to get it to go 3 times as fast. I mean, obviously each one of these compressions is a real compression. So if I put 3 pounds on and lock it at 3 pounds, and then I put the 1 pound here, it's going to go 3 times as fast. Fact. Yeah. All right. Let's see. That changes how the energy is delivered. Peak force, stopping distance, time, all that is mush. It doesn't mean anything. All there is there's real friction. Clearly friction isn't the same regardless of velocity. Again, you can slide over thin ice by doing exactly what I'm saying, which is change how much time you're on the ice. Change how much gravity is pushing you into the ice. Change how much time the gravity has to push you. You change whether the ice breaks or not. All right, not the total energy available. So again, whatever available means. There's no available. Energy is a real thing. It's transferred between different objects. Force is a real substance. All right, so I'm not dodging concrete statements. I think you are. Those are concrete statements. Yeah, they're concrete statements with no evidence. So again, that's the whole point. They're just regurgitations of the same thing they've been saying for 300 years that they have no physical evidence of. So I'm calling bullshit. I'm calling it's absolute bullshit, to argue that levers conserve kinetic energy and don't conserve momentum. It's just silly to think that works any other way. It has to conserve momentum. Just like the pulleys have to conserve momentum. And they're exactly the kind of quote claim and tested approach I want. Okay, well, testing is the key word here, right? We're all for, I think. I want testing, you want testing, everybody wants testing, except nobody wants testing. It's like your motion theory with no substance behind it. It's like everybody says testing is good, except when they're going to test the thing they don't want to have tested. So, yeah, let's have some tests. They've had 350 years to test the 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast theory, or 25 times the fuel to spin something 5 times as fast theory. And where have they produced the experimental evidence? All right, never. All right, if you're going to keep watching and pulling quotable transgressions, perfect. Drop one claim with a timestamp and what law observation it violates, and I'll answer the specific point cleanly. See, again, the whole object is well, how clean is if you're just going to say, oh, well, it's well established by Wikipedia. They proved it. Yeah, no, they didn't. And I'll correct the video language if it's wrong. Yeah, well, that's going to be, the wrong part is only going to be your concession. I mean, you're stating basically you have 2 experts, right? You have 2 spokespersons, implying that Leibniz was a very brilliant, great guy who did brilliant and great things. And I'm arguing that that's a fable. That's not who he really was. He did do some original science, but he did a lot of, looking in other people's, drawers, and his basic underlying theory was just religious gibberish. His science was so full of religion that it was all broken. It was turned into shit because he had to keep shoving God into the physics. So he wasn't a good scientist, that's for sure. And just so we're clear on the motion theory pitch in one line, all right, so he's saying motion theory isn't motion causes things. Exactly. Your theory is that nothing causes everything. Yeah, okay. It's things are stabilized patterns of motion. So whatever that could mean, things, a thing is a stabilized pattern of motion of nothing. So again, if you want to just say you have a universal ether theory and that you're somehow going to create little motions in the ether and say they're a little jellyfish of motion or something, I don't know what you're going to do. But this idea of making a solid object out of something called a standing wave, when you know a standing wave isn't made out of non-motion. Standing waves are made out of particles moving all over the fucking place. Nothing's not moving. It's all moving a lot. It's just not moving this way and that way. It's moving this way and that way. You know, that kind of thing. And the laws are rules for how those patterns hold, couple, and break. And the laws are rules. So again, we could argue about the laws, right? I mean, right under this Newton's second law, he says twice the force, twice the motion, 3 times the force, 3 times the motion. You want to ask your AI how you pervert that? Like say, actually ask the AI, how do I pervert a simple statement that says twice the force, twice the motion, 3 times the force, 3 times the motion into some argument that Newton believed it was 9 times the force to go 3 times the motion, and that 3 times the motion will produce 9 times the force. You know, you could ask me how would AI fool everybody into ignoring that statement, because it clearly contradicts any such notion. Clearly Newton wasn't a Leibnizian. All right, so enough of that. Now the question is, should I just play this video? I did play it once. I could play it again. Oh, these are the related videos. A ton of those. So this is on my video. Yeah, so I could go find his video on his channel. So maybe I'll go do that. Oh, this guy's really annoying. I'm able to throw this in just for the hell of it. Let's see what he says. So some asshole says, here's an easy way to understand why weight can't be energy or momentum. If you place an object on a scale, you get some spring compression, which you can use to launch the object sideways. According to you, the object will always gain the same velocity, like 1 mile per hour, correct? Well, yeah, depending on how much you compress. It's not going to be 1 mile an hour if it compresses 3 units of distance. But yes, 1 unit of force, there'll be a matching. 1 mile an hour will get you your weight. You'll weigh your weight when you move 1 mile an hour into a spring. All right, now let's make a new scale by placing another identical scale on top of the first one. So let's assume that the scale is massless, just not to mess up the subject. If you put the same object on the new double scale, it will measure its weight, but now there are 2 compressed springs. Yes, but they're only half as compressed. Okay, and both of them are compressed as much as the single spring in the original scale. So we know both of them aren't. That isn't how in series scales springs work. All right, so the double scale must have twice the energy. So no, it doesn't. And so I tried to explain that this guy's wrong. He just kept arguing with me. And it's like, what the fuck are you arguing about, you moron? I don't see 9 comments here. That's kind of weird. Where the hell are they all? Alright, so I told them, no, you can't do that. And they said, alright, if somebody experimentally proves that compressed is this, well, that settle the argument. I'm like, you can't prove it because it doesn't happen, moron. You know, so this is, do you think it's worth testing? And I say, it already has been tested. And then this guy chimes in, it has been tested indeed. I found this video through the link you provided. Okay, so this is, he's going to somehow prove that in-series springs compress the same amount and create 4 times the spring compression. No, he's not. Let's see, at 238, he tests springs in series and proves you wrong. Oh, whatever. No chance that happens. Oh, that's, I got, you know, I can't resist now, right? How could I possibly resist this challenge? Can't possibly be true. I mean, series and parallel are right the same for electricity. It's the same for all kinds of stuff. I mean, this is like law of the lever stuff. I shouldn't have to argue this with these morons.
In this experiment, we'll be looking at springs arranged in series and parallel, and we're going to do a combination as well. We need a retort stand. We also have slotted weights. Each is 10 grams.
Very boring.
And then we have a stick to hold multiple spring balances together. And of course, we have the spring balance. The spring balance is an instrument that is used to measure force. But the spring balance itself is made up of a spring inside of it. So this is perfect for this experiment. We are going to use the spring balance as a spring and a device to measure force. The slotted weight holder has a mass of 10 grams or 0.01 kilograms. And therefore, the force exerted by this slotted weight holder will be its weight, which is equals to mg, which is equals to 0.01 times 9.81. And the value of the force is approximately 0.1 newtons.
Okay, so he says approximately 0.1. It really isn't, but okay, it doesn't matter.
You can see the reading on the spring balance is almost...
Yeah, it's almost like 8 or 7, but go ahead.
0.1 newtons.
So we're looking at when he puts them on top of each other, it's like I said, now he's weighing the scale. So how the fuck can he possibly... He's weighing the other scale, so of course the scale is going to weigh a lot. The scale weighs more than the weights. So this moron didn't do the experiment. You have to do the experiment by putting the scales in some other arrangement, because obviously this isn't in series with two springs in series. This is a scale measuring the weight of a scale. If he just puts this scale under this scale, you'll see this scale is going to weigh that scale and say, wow, it weighs a whole bunch without even putting the weight on. So without even having the weight on, he's going to get a huge reading.
Once the force is removed, then the spring returns to its original shape and the reading on the spring balance is 0. In this experiment, we are going to use 50 grams and then we are going to add each slotted weight, which is 10 grams. This is 20 grams in total. Add one more and we have 30. Another one and we have 40. And finally, with the last slotted weight, we have a total of 50 grams, which exerts a force of 0.05 times 9.81, which is approximately 0.5 newtons.
Well, why don't you show us that on the scale?
When we apply the slotted weight to a single spring balance, we are applying a force of approximately 0.5 newtons. You can see the reading on the spring balance is 0.48 newtons. This may be due to an inaccuracy of the spring balance, or it may be that the slotted weights are not exactly 50 grams.
Alright, well, we know it's more likely that your spring balance is a piece of crap and poorly calibrated, but it doesn't matter, it's close enough.
But the important thing to note here is that the spring will bear the whole force exerted by the weight. We are going to use this stick to form a parallel arrangement of springs using the spring balances. And we are going to apply the same weight, that is 50 grams, to apply a force of 0.5 newtons onto this arrangement. From this arrangement, you can see that the reading on each spring balance is 0.24 newtons. That is 0.48 newtons shared equally between the two springs. In a parallel arrangement, the force is distributed equally to all the springs. When we add one spring balance to another, as shown, we have formed an arrangement of springs in series. And the first spring balance will show a reading of 0.4 newtons.
So we know that's the weight you have to subtract from the next reading when you put the weights on. So you have to subtract
newtons. This is actually the weight exerted by the second spring balance, which we will subtract from the readings later. Now we are going to add the 50 grams of weight or 0.5 newtons of force to this arrangement of springs in series. And when we look at the reading of the spring balance at the bottom, we will see that it gives the same reading as a single spring balance, that is 0.48 newtons of force.
Okay. Yeah, it seems, well, yeah, of course, because it's being supported by the top scale. So again, the two springs really aren't connected directly to each other. So the one scale is just measuring from the bottom of the other scale, so it is useless. So it's the top scale's reading that matters. These aren't springs in parallel because of the weight, the mass of the scales themselves. It's ruining the whole effect of putting two springs connected to each other and then stretching them. You're not doing two springs connected to each other.
It is experiencing the full force of the weight. And if we look at the spring balance on the top, we have a reading of 0.88 newtons.
Right, because it's measuring both the weight and the scale's weight, because the two springs aren't connected to each other. So again, it's just no point in making this argument, but whatever. It's clearly you've put greater energy into both scales because it's holding up more weight. These aren't springs in series. That's, I guess, all I have to say. This isn't two springs in series. This is two scales in series. Quite different. All right. So, okay. Point taken. Again, I did try to say massless scales. I did try to force the issue to be relevant to the fact of what the spring is going to actually do. Annoying. But everything is annoying. Everything. I'll be back. All right. Don't know if I want to really go through all this, but yeah, this is what always... Yeah, you never know what catches. All right. And so the simple argument is if you use one spring, you get a certain amount of compression, that is expansion in the coils of the spring. And that if you have double the amount of spring, then you're going to have 1/2 the amount of separation between the coils because the pressure is throughout the entire spring. So obviously the length of the spring, you're just saying I'm basically going to tie two springs together, and now the stretching has to be applied over that entire much bigger length, and so there's twice as many coils and they're half as much stretched. And so it's sort of this kind of idea that two of these equals one of this, but it's really just the same expansion, and it just has to do with the coils are going to expand less when you've distributed the weight over 18 coils versus 9 coils, you could argue. So if the first spring has 9 coils and this one has 18 coils, you can understand the 18 coils are going to expand less, half as much as the 9 coils would. All right, that should be clear enough. It should be. But anyway, all right. Yeah, just have to argue basic crap. It's just... What do these people actually think? I put 4 pounds on here and I put 4 pounds on here and somehow I get, 8 pounds worth of stretch in the spring? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Or 16? I mean, how can I... Well, anyway, never mind. Alright, so yeah, let's play the motion theory video. Hopefully I can get the sound to be somewhere around correct. We'll see. Might have an echo, might not, might something, might who knows what. Do what we can.
Okay, what if I told you that everything you think is, well, solid and real is basically an illusion?
Alright, so it's just the woman this time, doing the talking. And so again, everything solid is an illusion. Why would I bother worrying about it? If, let's just say the universe was just made out of something and, there were elemental bits that were, a trillionth the size of a grain of sand or whatever. Something so infinitesimally small you couldn't see it. So what? What do I care? What if I made it 1 trillion times smaller? What do I care? So again, this doesn't really add anything to say, oh, I'm going to go infinitely small and then decide there's no real actual thing, when clearly there still has to be a something, because it's going to follow and obey certain rules.
I mean, what if the universe isn't made of things at all? What if it's just this huge, complicated dance of pure motion?
Whatever that is. So I don't think it's complicated. That's the thing, right? It's dense. There's a lot of it. But the actual functions aren't complicated. So that would be the trick argument, is to say, If I wanted to know why electrons and protons behave the way they do, I could argue that 2 plus 2 plus 2, two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, three kinds of interaction, and I can explain all that behavior. So something very simple would be at the heart of building an atom. And once you start building atoms, you start building magnets, and you start building all kinds of stuff. And so it's all could be very simple in how it actually functions. It's just that it's dense. There's a lot of it.
Forget thinking about reality as a bunch of objects. Just for a few minutes, let's imagine it's a symphony.
So whatever that means. And we know a symphony is objects, so I know that anyway. I know that machines are vibrating. They're vibrating the molecules in the atmosphere. It vibrates my eardrum, so I know it's not magic. It's not nothing. It's a something. You need the medium. I know there's no sound in space. You need the medium.
You know when a single drop of rain hits a perfectly still puddle? For just a second, you see these incredible, complex circles spreading out, crossing over each other, creating this beautiful, temporary pattern.
So it's all this beautiful blah, 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 baby talk, baby talk, baby talk. But the fact is, you can know the actual physical mechanism is that there's individual water molecules, atoms, and that they're pushing on each other and they're uncompressible. So as they push on each other, they pile up, build pressure, and then they have to release the pressure somewhere. They have to find somewhere to go where there's less pressure.
And that right there, that's the perfect way to look at how motion theory sees the universe. It's not about the things themselves, the droplet or the water. It's about the patterns they make when they interact.
Yes, well, of course, it's about the properties that thing has. Okay, magnets, the important part is knowing the south and the north, and charges, plus and minus charges. And so, yes, the properties they have is really important. But I don't need to do this wooey nonsense of thinking the particles themselves are somehow has some internal motion when it doesn't have to have an internal motion.
Patterns that hold together just long enough for us to see them as something real.
So, we know the electrons and protons are forever particles, essentially. So, this is stuff that never changes, billions of years. You could argue, you could sit there and stare at an electron, it ain't going to do anything.
Soon we'll be telling the...
Pooh. I can pause. Save you trouble.
Really just about patterns. That's the bedrock of what we're going to call motion theory. Let's dive right into its one single central claim.
And here it is. This is the core of it all. Everything is just structured motion. That's it.
Pubic hair. Whatever. Oh, sorry, I don't get it. This is something that's real. It's supposed to be just, wow, that's so grokkable. No, that's just crap. Well, it's stuff near crap.
From the tiniest particle you can imagine to the light traveling from some super distant star. From a swirling hurricane to the actual thoughts firing in your brain right now, none of it is a static thing.
Well, we know that they have lots of static properties, really consistent properties. So that's the whole fault of what you're arguing here. We know that every single one is just like every single other one, that they're insanely eccentric in their function, and they're very precise. Billions of years traveled, and the frequency doesn't change, and this doesn't change, and that doesn't change. So let's not pretend that this is whatever this swirly-burly is.
They're more like self-sustaining rhythms. They're loops of activity, constantly.
No, I don't know. No, I don't. I don't know what loops of activity are. Never really encountered loops of activity.
Balancing what comes in and what goes out just to hold their shape.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this idea of a universe that's always in motion, we kind of need a new way to talk about it.
So again, the idea that the universe is always in motion is not a new idea, and certainly not one I disagree with. I'm the one arguing that, they're going to argue later that time and relativity kind of arguments. And again, I can make the simple argument that everything in the universe is being outed all the time. There's trillions of little bits of shit flying through you all the time. Discrete quanta of motion, whatever you want to call it. But it's a real amount of stuff that travels through an area in a specific amount of time. And the fact is everything in the universe is exposed to that stuff, and that's the real clock. The real clock is the background radiation passing through everything, no matter where it goes in the universe. The cosmic background radiation is going to be the same wherever you go. It's going to look the same. It's going to be the same frickin' dumb pattern. So it's basically just telling you that you can't pretend that you can move slower or do something different, because the space itself always gets hit with the same amount of force going through that particular location in space. You can never change how much force is any location in the universe. They all are being hit with essentially the same force. I mean, except when you're right next to a supernova or something.
The old words we use, words like mass and time, they're all tied up in this idea of a world full of static objects.
Yes, stuff, right. Labelable, definable stuff with properties. So that was the whole pursuit of physics, is really to tie that stuff down. And when they figured out there was electrons, and then they figured out there was protons, and then they figured out there was neutrons, and then that's where they screwed up, because they didn't figure out that neutrons were just electrons stuck to a proton. But anyway, that's the idea. And then they built a nucleus, and then they built the silly atoms with orbiting crap, but there's no orbiting crap. So yeah, they have a whole bunch of it wrong. But you're not going to argue those. You're not going to show me that you know better. You're going to show me that you know as badly as they do. I mean, do you really think electrons are electronables, or electron motion, or whatever you think an electron is, electron standing wave? Do you really think it's orbiting the nucleus?
Motion theory basically hands us a new dictionary, a way to redefine these fundamental concepts. First up, time. Let's just forget the idea of time as some universal river flowing for everyone.
Okay, so I would argue you can't forget that, because that's exactly what the universe is doing. There's a river of particles going through every bit of space, and the river is effectively the same river for every bit of space. There's just no place to escape the river, and you can't pretend you're doing less river. You can't, I encountered less river because I went somewhere. Well, you can't do that.
In this view, time is just a local rate. Think of it like the frame rate on a video. A pattern with a higher frame rate updates itself faster. It experiences more ticks of its own internal clock, compared to a slower pattern, even over the same amount of, hours.
So exactly, and I'm just arguing that the light, the strobe, let's say a stroboscope, if you want to think of it that way, or whatever you want to say the light is, it's the same, it has the same frequency everywhere. You can't pretend you're going to go into some different kind of light where you can move a different speed and you're going to function differently, because it's the same volume of photons that are interacting with you. You're at the same temperature. You're at the same. You can't escape that clock. The photon clock is impossible to escape.
More time. And what about gravity? It's not some mysterious pull.
Okay, so again, stupid. It's not some bent fake geodesic. Well, that's sort of what you're arguing, though. You're saying it's even faker. It's not even a geodesic. I mean, I don't even know what I don't know, again, with this motion crap. I don't know how you possibly make this mechanism out of just motion, and somehow this magical motion creates energy, momentum, gives objects momentum, and with no source of energy, from no source.
Some invisible string yanking on things. In this view, gravity is simply convergence. It's the natural tendency for all motion to follow the path of least resistance. And where's that path? It's always toward areas that are more dense, more organized.
Oh, sorry, I fell asleep. More dense and more organized. So, for no reason. And somehow there's an attractiveness to the structured, dense things. No, it's almost the opposite of the rational theory, right? It's like the high pressure would be the place you're least likely to go. That's where the organized stuff is, where the pressure's high. So it seems like, no, I wouldn't go there.
More synchronized. So gravity isn't this weird force pulling us down. It's just the natural flow of motion.
Whatever that is, natural flow of motion. So he thinks that's a competing theory. Natural flow of motion. That's why there's gravity. It's natural flow of motion. Phew. All right, so obviously I have my theory, which is, yes, it's all about photons. The fact is the Earth is molten inside. It's molten inside because it's absorbed a ton of energy out of the universe. You know, all of that background radiation, all of those cosmic rays, all kinds of different stuff. And the fact is that it absorbed that stuff below me, and so those rays never got to me because they got absorbed heating the Earth, and they're still doing it right this second. They're heating it. And they have to keep fueling that heat. They can't just do it 4 billion years ago and say, I'll stay hot forever. That can't happen. So clearly it's a fuel that has to keep being refueled. You have to refuel the fire that keeps the Earth melting. And so it's happening all the time. And that's the differential I fall into. So I get pushed because the raw universe is hitting me with more crap than the universe from below. Just a simple explanation. It just has to do with the fact is the universe is full of little discrete bits of frickin' energy flying in all kinds of vector, straight line vectors. And no matter what I created as a universe, it would always be, I put an object in it, it's going to look like it's going to get pushed. It's going to get pushed into each other. It's going to be compressed.
So if mass isn't stuff, then what is it? Well, it's a pattern's inertia.
So it's a pattern's inertia, so whatever that is. So somehow the pattern has a resistance to change now. And again, the whole idea of a resistance to change without acknowledging the fact that there are buckets and there's barrels and there's tubs and there's swimming pools and there's oceans, all kind of different size vessels. And yes, you're not going to be able to fill them all with the same drop of water.
Stubbornness, really. To be a little more precise, it's a measure of how much energy you need to change a pattern's existing motion. See? It's not a fundamental building block.
Change is a nice word. It's an interesting concept. It's all over the place in physics, I guess you could argue, and that's all you're really measuring is saying, as Newton said, the change in the motion is the same as the change in the amount of force. Change the amount of force, change the amount of motion, and vice versa. Really simple.
It's just a property of the motion itself. And finally, energy. You can think of energy as the fuel that powers all these patterns of motion.
So again, energy is the quality of being in motion. That's it. Something just has to be in motion and it has energy. So whether it's the tiniest particle in the universe or the biggest, doesn't matter. If it's moving, it's got energy. Energy is just momentum.
The built-in potential for change inside a system. It's the budget a pattern has to either change itself or to go and influence the patterns all around it.
It just has to do with weight. Frankly, momentum is just weight, and you're just saying you give things weight by giving them motion. That's what gravity does. It gives you motion, your motion becomes your weight.
All right, now that we've got our new dictionary, let's actually use it to rewrite the rules of reality. This is where this whole motion...
So again, they're not rewriting rules, they're just claiming postulates, and there's no statement of how the reasoning or the evidence for the statements being true.
Theory thing really starts to click. Let's start with a really basic question. If everything is always moving, how can something like a rock just be solid? Okay, imagine you pluck a violin.
So this doesn't make any sense at all, because obviously a rock is a big, huge thing. What do we think these two nodes are? How do we even create this standing wave? And again, a standing wave isn't a standing wave. It's made out of something constantly, pieces of stuff moving. So you're not going to be able to defend, I don't think, the concept that you can make a standing wave without a medium. You're not going to make one in space.
String. It's vibrating like crazy, right? But it creates a stable, repeating shape that, to our eyes, looks like it's holding still. That's a standing wave. And that, according to motion theory, is exactly what a solid object is. It's just furious motion that's been trapped in a self-reinforcing rhythm. Okay, so if
So what's the difference between the electron one and the proton one? They're standing waves. Again, this is just, this isn't physics. It's not science. It's a, whatever, Dr. Seuss book, pretending to be a religion.
solid objects are really just trapped motion, what about the forces that act on them? Let's take another look at gravity. The classical view, the one we all learned, talks about this mysterious force acting over a distance.
But motion theory sees it completely differently. It's not a pull, it's a path that motion just
So it's a path that motion just naturally goes for some no good reason. So again, it's just this idea that somehow the matter is moved by no force and no mechanism. It just does it because it does it. It is because it is. Sorry, that's not science. That's not an answer. I mean, nobody smart should accept that as an answer. It is because it is. It does because it does. No, that's bullshit. Something Yoda might say.
naturally follows. Picture a leaf that gets caught in a whirlpool. Is it being pulled to the center by some weird force? No, of course not. It's simply following the flow of the water.
It's being pushed by the water. It's not following it, but whatever. It's not saying I want or I'm going to do. It's being forced to do. That's why it's called force. It's because it forces things.
Well, that's gravity. Planets don't orbit the sun because they're being pulled on a leash. They're just following the curved pathways of motion.
All right, so there's no curved pathway. They're not doing that, that's for sure. They're running straight line vector, and they're having two tangential vectors. They have a vector this way and a vector that way, and they end up going in some new direction, and that's what they just keep doing. And it's all very straight line, no woo necessary.
That the sun's immense density has created in the space around it.
So if gravity is just the flow of motion, what does that
So let's just understand gravity's doing exactly what light bulbs do in reverse. So if you just reverse the light bulb in terms of the concept, it's exactly the same damn thing as gravity. Same pattern. All right. There's no rational way to change it into something other than straight line vectors. It doesn't make any sense as anything other than straight line vectors.
mean for mass? I mean, if it's not the stuff that's being pulled, then what on earth is it?
Remember, mass is a measure of inertia, how much a pattern resists change. Think about a heavy weight on a spring. It bounces up and down more slowly because it's more stubborn about being retuned. It's the same idea. And get this, in an atom, most of the mass doesn't even come from the particles themselves. It comes from the insane amount of energy in the confined motion.
All right, says you. So that's just an assertion. There's an insane amount of energy, and it's not the electrons and protons. I would argue they've mismeasured the weight of electrons, and so we actually do weigh our actual mass. That our atomic mass is our real mass. They just mismeasured the mass of electrons.
And the fields binding the whole thing together.
Okay, so if mass is just a property of motion, that leads us to the biggest granddaddy concept of them all, time. Is it really this
Right, so you're just saying, okay, so you're saying that mass isn't, relevant to the component of energy, when obviously it is. So you can't really get away with this idea that I'm going to just blow up the idea of mass, because it's essential to understand how you can transfer energy. So you can only do it through mass.
universal river we all imagine flowing at the exact
I mean, even if you believe in mv squared, it still requires you to have an mv.
same rate for everyone everywhere?
Motion theory says absolutely not. Your body.
Okay, so obviously I'm arguing that that's just nonsense. There's no way you're going to really figure out how you can create a different universe for you to travel to. It's all a different photonic universe. You just can't do it. There's no way you can go anywhere and change how much of this energy is in that space. It's all the energy is just reflecting off of objects, right? I'm thermodynamically at equilibrium. Especially if you take away my internal biosphere. The fact is, the external universe and me are at equilibrium. I don't absorb any heat from the world. I don't give it back any more heat than I take in. I'm at equilibrium. So everything goes in, it comes back out again. And so everything is basically behaving in that system. So you have to understand, when something does at some point radiate more energy, where did it get it from? Well, it had to have gotten it through some sort of storage or taking. So there had to be some period in its history where it did absorb a bunch of energy, where it wasn't at equilibrium. So that's a simple argument. And I'm just saying that the basic fact is everything in the universe is running the same way. It's the same galaxies, the same stars it's made out of, same stuff. So how could you approximate that you could go somewhere and change what time it is? You can't change what time it is. You can't travel to a different time. Can't happen. Because you have to do it in the same amount of photons per second. You can never change how many photons per second are going through you. You plow into them, then less of them are catching you from behind. You know, you just can't change how many you're interacting with. And that clock tells you how hot you are, and that clock tells you what time it is.
Body, your brain, your entire experience of the world, it's all a unique pattern of motion, ticking.
Yeah, unique pattern of motion. I mean, that's just gooey mush. Yes, we're all unique. It's not special. Unique. It's my unique. There. Unique. There, I'm being unique.
Away at its own specific rate. You know Einstein's famous time dilation? Well, in this view,
Yeah, it's garbage. Nonsense. So again, we won't have any real evidence that this is anything other than broken clock syndrome.
that's just a synchronization lag between patterns that are moving at different speeds.
Yeah, so again, patterns that are moving at different blah, 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 blah. And somehow it's gravity does half of it, and somehow motion does some of it, and it's somehow all this bullshit, and none of it. I shouldn't be very compelling to people who are reasonable, because again, it's just so obvious what time is. Time is the fact that the universe has one thing, okay, that does move at this incredibly slow speed versus instantaneous. The speed of light, although it seems very fast to us, is incredibly slow compared to instantaneous. And that thing existing means you're not dilating anything.
There's no universal now.
Yes, there is. It's a universal. The photons are the universal. They travel distance consistently at the same rate everywhere, all the time.
There's just this incredible symphony of countless individual rhythms.
No, blah, 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 blah. Yuck, symphony of rhythms. I just don't, I don't know what to say. It sounds like such mushy little girly stuff. Symphony of rhythms.
All playing at their own tempo. So this new way of thinking about time, mass, and gravity, it has some really profound implications. This isn't just a new way of looking at physics.
All right, so there's nothing new. He's not challenging any existing notions. He's not saying anything at all, and he's providing no unifying mathematical structure. So there's no theory of everything here, and there's certainly no unification of anything here.
It's a new way of looking at, well, everything. From the tiny...
And it's just so annoying because it's really nicely presented, right? I mean, I'm envious that he has this, control over these tools, that he can, produce this kind of content. And I have to say, it's impressive. But that's what bothers me, is that so far, you're wondering how will this get used by so many evildoers will use this very technology to deceive people. And that's scary.
A cell to the biggest galaxy cluster. And you really do see this idea of structured motion at every single scale. I mean, what is life itself? It's just a set of incredibly complex patterns.
All right, so again, incredibly complex. Now, it's very simple, again, mechanism, but very dense. So there's just so much of it.
From our DNA to our brains that have figured out how to remember and resynchronize themselves. What's a
Whatever.
computer?
They figured out how to, remember and resynchronize. They figured it out. Something figured it out and did it. No, that's not how it happened. It's a byproduct of evolution, and it's a slow, tedious, evil process of deformation and mutation. Oh, you just look at all the crap living in the ocean, all these little tiny critters and all this, it's just disgusting. All the attrition. They have 1 million offspring, and, 999,999 of them are, annihilated in 15 minutes.
It's just disciplined motion where we guide electrical currents with fixed rules to process information. In the entire cosmos, it's this grand dance between motion just drifting out in the voids and then converging into that great cosmic web of galaxies we see.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Look, it says chemistry does this thing where you can have, you go from a very fixed number of atoms, you only have 100 of them, and you can have almost an infinite number of chemical compounds you can build out of that. And so, yes, you're off to the races. But they're not a good race. You're not going to get anywhere.
This perspective offers a pretty fascinating way to reinterpret the history of science. Maybe, just maybe, physics didn't discover this whole zoo of different fundamental things like forces and fields.
So, like forces and fields, there wouldn't be all that many. There's not many zoos of forces and fields. It's all the particles that the silly part. But of course, if they're going to give a field to every single particle, then it's a zoo of fields. But yeah, okay. It depends. I don't think all physicists are really too keen on this field for every particle theory.
What if instead it just brilliantly observed and cataloged all these different patterns of motion, gave them labels, and then developed incredibly powerful math to describe how they behave?
I don't think the math is all that incredibly powerful, so that's another place where I'd say it's show me, and they don't show me. What math? What incredible math do they show you? Do they show you doing something incredible with their math? No.
The math absolutely works, but maybe
Says you.
it's just the grammar describing one single subject, motion.
Yes, and it does it badly. The one subject, motion, it does badly because it does this mv squared crap that doesn't happen. It doesn't produce any confirming evidence. There's no confirming physical evidence that there's any such thing as living force. V squared.
So, where does all this leave us? Is motion theory the final answer to everything? Honestly, that's not really the point.
No, it isn't. I think the point is to make it clearer. Okay, so this whole lens thing, you can make things, you can distort things with a lens, and you can make them clearer. See, lens isn't giving you the big picture. So lenses can do both.
The point
I don't think you're showing us more resolution. You're not showing us a greater detail, more pixels. You're zooming out and away, and frankly, you're changing the angle and looking in the wrong direction.
is to offer you a new lens, a powerful new tool for your curiosity, a way to see the world just a little bit differently. So here's your invitation to become a motion theorist yourself. The next time you look at anything, a tree, a traffic jam, your own reflection in a window, don't just see things. Ask yourself two really simple questions.
Right. Do I believe in electrons and protons? And if I do, then I'd have to understand that every single thing that's happening has to happen between those electrons and protons first. That they're the real universe. That the real universe is electrons and protons in this empty space being manipulated by this stuff we call force. And that's all there is. And that's the only universe. And this, pretending to be things, you're just made out of things. And those things have to do you before you can do you. You're a byproduct of the laws controlling electrons and protons. There are no other laws.
What is actually moving here? And what rule, what boundary is shaping that motion into this specific pattern? When you think you see an object, just try for a second to see the dynamic loop of activity that's keeping it going.
Whatever that even means. Dynamic loop of activity. So I'm watching a bowling ball going down the alley. This is the activity thing, and then the pins have the activity, and then the activity is all gone. Where'd it go? And I have to say, oh, okay, I'm smart, so I know the activity is now in the form of vibrating wood and things over here and heat, and essentially, and it's all going to just dissipate out of the bowling alley as infrared radiation.
The universe isn't some museum full of static exhibits. It's a symphony of motion.
Oh, la la la, symphony again. it's a bug-averse.
And you're not just a listener in the audience, you are part of the music. So, what song are you going to play?
Like, subscribe, share, and ding. Oh dear. Well, this is the best graphic he has. This is a pretty good graphic. Yes, I don't know if he made that one or not. But really, if you have to tell people to do all of that stuff, your audience, you're not really saying much about your audience, except, boy, you must be all dumb fuckers. I have to explain to you to subscribe and like and talk and share and do something to support the videos. Oh, you couldn't figure that out on your own, that you need to support the videos you like? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so you won me over with that. Okay, so you did a good job on that graphic, if you didn't steal it. So anyway, I guess AI might have made that for him. I don't know. But I admire the fact that he has great control over this AI thing and has manipulated it into creating this whole structure that's quite impressive. But it's really not anything. It's just, as he states, he's just changing the language and assuming that somehow if he translates it into an old dead language like Latin or something, that it'll all be much more understandable. And it's just that kind of thing. He's not really adding value. He's just riding on, the shoulders of giants, so to speak, stealing their stuff. And you should do that carefully. Like I said, I'm sure I've said some things about some scientists that might have been too short shrifty, but there's got to be a real effort where people, to lie about Newton, and that's what people are doing right now. They're just lying overtly about what Newton believed. He thought gravity was a time-dependent force, and he didn't believe in 1/2 mv squared, and he certainly didn't believe in v squared. I mean, there's not a single reference to any kind of concept of quadratic increases in energy based on velocity. He clearly didn't believe it, and they keep putting that shit in his mouth. All right, what's all these comments? He's got more comments than were here before. Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of comments to himself. Let's see, motion theory, a theory of everything, 8 minutes. Let's see, motion theory, AI, just some mainstream motion labels, basic mechanics. So I guess he's putting all this stuff in because it's good to, it's good for the YouTube algorithm, I guess, to have all of this. Maybe I should do some of this shit. Yeah, look at all these definitions. Oh, brother. How fast molecules, what's a molecule? I thought it was just supposed to be motion. Rearrange their motion bonds. Reaction rate. Let's see. Transition state. High motion energy configuration on the way between reactions and products. Whatever that could mean. Overall pace set by motion bringing molecules together. Oh, that's the diffusion limited reaction. Yeah. All right, anyway. Wow, this is all a lot. He's got a lot of definitions in here. Even his definitions is a huge chunk of definitions. I didn't even know there were this many concepts to define. Look at all these definitions. Amazing. All right. I'll have to save them for later perusal. All right, so anyway, this is probably enough of a video. Way past enough, I would imagine. So, let's see if he hooked any morons here. Suckers. Victims. Let's see. There's 2 replies to here. How long? All right, this guy asked. He has a really invisible icon. So he says, how long ago did you come up with the idea? Why did you need AI to finish the theory? Well, obviously you didn't need it, but AI is really an enhancement, that's for sure. All right, says all the famous labels humans invented for reality map to what they really are in motion. Theory terms. Keep the math if you want. Under the hood, it's all structured motion. So this isn't an answer to that question. So let's see if there's something else he said here. Foundations. Yeah, look at all of this stuff again. Eef. 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 Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's just, that's sort of spammy, I guess, right? I don't know what else to call that. I don't think people are actually going to go through this and read all that crap. Let's see, he says, a year ago, we started working on it. I was just bouncing my thoughts and ideas off AI, and the AI agreed with me that yes, if everything could be structured motion, and all of what humans have been doing is labeling and manipulating different types of motion structures. See, he says of motion structures. Well, obviously, those and behaviors really have to do with properties. You have to have physics to have properties. I'm not the first one to think like this. Okay, that's where I'm a little bit, I don't know. That's why I started the Motion Seers video montage. Okay, all the brilliant scientists and philosophers of the past that have been trying to figure out the motions. Recently just had a huge discussion with Gork. I guess that's another AI, and it likes the idea too. And the 2LMM started splitting out scientific experiments to test. Well, that would be nice to see. I mean that's a test of real intelligence. So if the AI can actually produce a theory of experimental proof, that means it has to really be doing some kind of thinking, But I don't think it's ever going to do that. I don't think it's really going to do that. I mean, it'll just say do the same experiment underwater. You'll find some experiment you can do above in air, oxygen, and then it'll find some experiment just say do the same experiment underwater or something. But it won't do anything creative because it doesn't have a creative intelligence. All right. It's fact-checking itself against Wikipedia again, so it's never going to think right. It's just never going to happen. All right. Is that some guy who built a 5-acre pond? Did I watch that years ago? No, probably not. I don't know. It's one of those stories I remember watching. There's so many of these interesting videos on YouTube. So many people doing the same kind of thing, and there's people doing all kinds of this underwater shit now. I don't know how they do this crap without getting killed. All kinds of great photography, all kinds of shit. It's amazing. People raising things. I don't know if I like that idea too much. A lot of those kind of videos. I made this, I made that. I raised something from an egg. It's all kind of spooky. But they're all it's like people doing the same exact video. They even have the same personality. It's a completely different person, but they talk the same. The whole jokes are all the same. The same jokes, the same everything. It's like they're just formula. So it's another like AI thing. I guess AI eventually will start making those kind of videos and just make up a whole fake video about how it raised some sort of thing from an egg. They'll just make up the whole story. But anyway, okay, so enough of this. We don't need to play here anymore. All right, so I think it's way more than enough of a video. So I don't expect this guy to listen to all this stuff, but whatever. Let's see what happens. Physics is a really interesting subject, and I wish somebody else was interested in it. Actually proving something, proving what the truth is. That would be really interesting if there was some other people interested in science actually proving claims. That would be really cool. Anyway, till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot.